Let's get battle ready today on the Manspace.
You got a real foggy window over there, dude.
Welcome, Space Spartans. Because I said battle ready. Get it? It's because it was on one of those websites I was looking at.
Get battle ready
Get battle ready in 30 days. Whatever that means. This is not, I didn't intend to start here, but this was interesting. My wife was asking me this. Kind of like, do you think like football's popularity just keeps going higher and higher? And like the recent Super Bowl was like the highest it's ever been. The ratings or not ratings, but the
viewership.
Yeah. And she was like, do you think this is because like we don't have a war? Like this is the only way men can go and kind of experience their their fight in them. Mm-hmm. Even those of us who are just watching, we get to experience the fight, I guess. And I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting thought, because I have thought about the way we handle disasters, and do we do better in disasters?
Mm-hmm.
Because our brain shifts into like, well, this is just what has to get done. Like thinking about the, makes me think of today's episode is brought to you by Torchy's Tacos. Just kidding, it's not. If you live somewhere there's a Torchy's, go treat yourself. If you don't, sorry.
You'll never know what you're missing. Eventually
will, though. I mean, it'll be everywhere eventually. They are darn good tacos. If you can call them tacos. Anyway, sorry. You were talking about how Elon Musk's plan is like, we'll tear it all down and we'll rebuild it correctly. And it feels like, sometimes it feels like, oh, it is kind of nice to like, I get when people are like, okay, now I've done this thing. Now I want to go and reset and start over. Because it's like I need to push or the challenge of something. And so I wonder about this.
Football and war.
Yeah, like the
sports.
Well, and the masculinity thing that's rampant right now, and actually tying it into that topic that's a listener request thing that's like the relationship between exercise, food, and mental health, which we'll probably have to do another one on, because I have not done any follow-up questions on that to say, hey, what exactly did you mean?
They're related.
Yeah, they're definitely related.
I saw this thing last night that was like, my doctor said, hey, don't eat anything fatty. And I was like, so like no burgers and bacon? He's like, no fatty, don't eat anything.
No fatty. That's why the importance of commas. I was just thinking, it's kind of funny because it's like, just to start this off, I mean, I'll tie this, probably, we'll see, back into this idea of like, of how these things all relate in my head, and why I bring up the be battle ready and the football thing. But I was thinking about how when you subtract certain things out of your diet, like we all know that sugar and caffeine and fats, they all like boost our brain for a period of time. Like, yay.
Yeah.
Although sugar tends to make me like, hey, let's take a nap. Let's gather everybody around. And not like when I have a sugar crash, it's like right, as soon as I drink it, it's like, hey, everyone, it's nap time.
It's time to chill.
But thinking about how when I cut those things out, like if I eat less sugar, I'm like, I mean, what am I going to look forward to tomorrow?
Yeah.
And then I have to look forward to my exercise. It's like, I mean, and actually, if I don't eat a ton of sugar, my exercise goes way better, and it does feel a little bit like invigorating to be like, oh, this
afterward.
I feel like I'm making progress even on my exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And how if I don't exercise, I'm more likely to want to eat junk.
Dude, it just occurred to me, maybe this is what he's saying.
Well, I could always just text and ask, but go ahead.
Well, I think we often think about it
more fun,
like in the direction of, if you eat better and exercise, your mental health will improve. But what if your mental health sucks and you're trying to get yourself to eat better and exercise? Like, where do you start?
Oh,
I think I just tapped into his brain.
Well, believe it or not, that is where I'm pointing right at the camera. Believe it or not, that is where my where this topic is going today. I'll just say where the topic I think is going today. And it actually has to do with this idea of discipline. Dun, dun, dun. Felt like I paused there long enough, like we should wait for something really cool to happen. Oh.
I don't know that we'll do this one next week because we don't have 2 hours, but that feeds right into the emotions thing too.
The four horsemen of the emotion, Matt.
The emotion apocalypse.
The motion space, the space-averse, the four horsemen of the space-averse. We should do that in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'll be coming down there on the 5th.
Oh crap! Really?
What? Everyone, listen while we schedule.
Is that when you were supposed to come?
Well, yeah, because it's normally supposed to be. That's when it works out for me.
Because it's spring break.
No, well, yeah, that too, and I'll have people in town and all sorts of stuff. Is the 5th not going to work?
No, it will.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
If we're just doing the normal time, right?
Yeah. I mean, plus 2 hours. We're going to do a big old honking episode.
No, wait. Sorry, that's here. Yes.
All right. So.
Yeah.
So it is an interesting question. This idea of, is it like when your mental health is low, it is very hard to, like, you are drawn towards dopamine boosters, we could say, whether it's food or alcohol or drugs or porn or whatever. And obviously the more actually it's kind of interesting. The research on gut health and like the tie between gut and brain is still relatively actually unknown. Like we know there's a tie, but we don't really understand fully how those things impact each other, but like how the gut specifically impacts mental health. Yeah. And what's funny is even though we don't understand it very well, we're still like rampantly running to like do this supplement and it will fix your gut health. And it's like, we don't actually know much about that supplement. And, Matt and I were just talking at lunch today about my old professor, Scott, who told me about his friend who used to clean out like, not latrines. That's not the word I'm looking for, but
urinals,
outhouses, like those things. That's where like you have to clean this stuff out.
Oh, like the portable ones?
Yeah, like porta potties. That's like that kind of stuff. Oh. And that's where he's like, let me show you something. He sprayed it down. He's like, look at that. That's all those supplements that people take. It's like they just go right through your body. That's science. You can take that to the bank. So like because I wonder about this thing. I get super annoyed. Matt and I did just a quick search on, like it was very brief, and we'll probably do this on a different episode, but on what other podcasts for men say and like
topics and things like that.
Yeah, like how would we approach that topic different than they would? And almost every single time I pull up anything for men, I'm like, well, that's not how I would do it. Mm-hmm. So I was looking up one that talks about being battle ready, and it's always these terms. It's like, why do we do that? Why do we have to have this like I'm not really a fighter, and so I don't have the urge to like get battle ready. I feel like, well, what does that mean? What am I fighting? And in the end, will it be like I'm just fighting my wife? Like I'm going to go in there and I will fight her into submission? I don't like. Well, I don't get it. Even though, and maybe I don't have that. Maybe we get small snippets of that thing. Well, now I'm going to just veer off into Rob's headspace. Maybe we get small snippets of it in the job we do. Like maybe when there's some big task you have to accomplish, it feels like a battle, or like in session, it happens. Like I feel like sometimes there's a battle between me and my client, like, and I must win. I just make a bunch of jokes and say I'm really smart and how I'm the smartest guy in the room and crap like that. And then
they stop.
And they're like, you're right, Rob. I'm like, ha, who's a winner? I guess I am battle ready. So here's what I'm wondering about this. There's a whole bunch of thoughts that went through my head as I started to put all these things together we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And we've talked many times about, let me start with this, and then I'll kind of build off of this. Do you, I think you'd agree with this. In what way would you
tell me what I'll think?
I'm battle ready.
I'm going to slap you with this
Oh man.
weird little hand.
I put it up there because no. There you go.
There we go.
I put it up there because you can actually stick it's supposed to go on your fingers.
Yeah.
And all session I would just play with it, and I didn't realize I'd be talking, seeing these serious things in this little dinky hands. People are like, I can't take you seriously, dude. It's like, I don't know how anybody ever works with me. What was I going to say?
You were going to ask me a question. You were battle ready, and I told you, don't tell me my business, devil woman.
I'd say this either because the part I think you agree with is, have we become a culture of overthinking?
Yeah.
And then
I will agree.
Specifically then, in what way? Like, how do you see overthinking playing out? You weren't ready for that question.
Well, I think
domination.
I think I would rather have, where do you not see it?
Oh.
And that's just when people are like being present. But I mean, to his topic, we call it mental health all the time, when like that just kind of presupposes that everything that goes on in our whole body that isn't physical is a mental game. And it's like, there's so much more going on, to your point. But I think that's where like the conscious experience is. And it's, I think we've said before, sometimes just like stopping your thoughts is the most helpful thing you can do, because you know exactly where it goes every time, but it feels productive. It feels like I'm figuring something out, and you don't even realize that you're actually wasting a ton of time and energy thinking about things that probably aren't going to happen, and you're working yourself up physiologically, emotionally. I think that the only time that we're not, it's not the opposite of overthinking. So, well, I guess to answer your question, I think we overthink in most situations. And then like work, relationships, all sorts of things. But I think that the overthinking obviously usually is tied to moments of high stress or high pressure or high anxiety or urgency or whatever. But then I think we do the opposite, which is just like completely shut off and go mindless. And very rarely are we in between those two states where we're fully aware, but not thinking.
So,
does that make sense?
Yes.
I think that's kind of what
this is
exercise does sometimes.
That's actually like, because we've talked about that on the episode with Josh a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I've talked about that with clients a bunch, that and this is, I've even watched some clients do this. It's a grounding thing where it's like they'll do a repetitive tap. It's almost like a way of like, I will create some sort of metronome in my body so that there's something stable I can count on.
Yeah.
And I think that's what running does, is it creates like a repetitive thing that kind of helps your brain zone out. Mm-hmm. I was watching an episode of Scrubs, because that's what I do with my time. Honestly, sometimes, especially because Becky's in school right now. And so at night she will...
You try to pretend you're a doctor?
It's time for another exam. She will study until, like, I don't know how that woman studies like she does. It's incredible. Seriously, I can study for like an hour. And I was like, well, if I don't know it now, I don't know it. That got me through school. But she, because of that, like, I feel like I'm watching a ton of TV, but I was watching this episode of Scrubs, and Turk was like, hey, who's the best surgeon? Is it me or this woman who you gave the Whipple assignment to, or Whipple surgery to? And he goes, the doctor says, like, it's neither one of you. And he looks back at the Todd. The Todd is the dude who makes every joke and do an innuendo and wears a banana hammock and all sorts of stuff. And he's like, what? He's like, he doesn't think. He just goes in there and does stuff. Like, and it shows him, Todd, before he's doing a surgery, talking about how sharp this scalpel is and he's going to cut this woman, and Turk's like, well, I don't think I do that. Am I thinking this? And I mean, I try to make sure that this happens, this happened, this happened. And it's like, just get in the moment and feel it. Mm-hmm. And there is something to be said for this, like the running, we've talked about before. And this is also in the book, Thinking Fast and Slow, but that things have to be put on autopilot.
Yeah.
And when they're put on autopilot, then it's like, well, I don't think about that part anymore. I just do that part.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to, and this is, I've actually thought this with therapy. Like sometimes I will way overthink in session. I don't know. Do you ever do this? Like you'll be sitting in session and I will be thinking, is this the best thing to do right now? Should I be doing something else? Am I actually even good at this? Like, it doesn't seem like he or she's responding to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I will totally overthink the crap out of that kind of stuff. Do you do that? Or is it just me?
No, it's like, I was actually thinking about this, was it this week? At least this week, but probably multiple other times where, when somebody's talking about something, at this point, you can kind of anticipate where they're going.
Oh, my clients?
Yeah, like as they start talking about something, you're kind of like, okay, this is where this is going to end up.
Yeah,
and
almost immediately sometimes.
For me, it's kind of like several hypotheses kind of pop up, and then I kind of sort through. But more often than not now, but like just recently, I have had more of that question of like statement or question.
Oh,
right now.
Yeah.
And then like more like present, short, like next little step question, and but it is kind of cool to like, I think it is interesting to just not as like an overthinking exercise, but it's like, man, those are all the connections that have been made through all these like thousands of conversations, that when somebody starts talking about something, like I'm not trying to lead it, I'm not trying to stop it short. You stop short. I'm not trying to like impose some personal understanding on their experience, but all that stuff just loads up, and it's like and so I know I could go there if I wanted to, and sometimes I do, right? But like, for whatever reason right now, it's like slower, kind of really succinct questions.
Yeah.
Because that's a big struggle for me, and it always has been in therapy, like, and in teaching too. Sometimes I'll be like filtering thinking and speaking, and I feel most effective when that all slows down and what comes out of my mouth is like an unhalting, very smooth, succinct statement or question that has a lot of truth packed into it, and it just has I think it has better impact. That's why I was telling you that one time when I was like, I think it was when I first was drinking the energy drinks every day. For whatever reason, it was really helping me do that. And I had several clients like, man, you have really good questions today. And I'm like, well, thank the C4. It's literally blowing a hole in my brain and making everything come together. Like, and I think it's more like, it takes the conversation down a notch, right? It makes it more real, makes it more like in the present moment. And I think when we overthink things, we're not in the moment. So we have all sorts of ideas about what has happened and what could happen and where to go and how to plan and all of that. But I do think that's an important skill. But
for sure,
being in the moment and like, those are the moments where all of a sudden something really powerful and like deeply emotionally impactful just, it's happened a couple times this week where it's just like one line and it was like, oh my gosh, that must have validated something that you've been holding on to for a long time, because it's just like no words, just bursting into tears, and then processing it. But I don't think you can, like, if you're overthinking in a moment like that, it's gone.
Yeah, I think at least for me, sometimes when it happens in therapy, if I'm overthinking, I'm overthinking how they'll respond, and so I'll couch my question certain ways, and I'll totally pull off the impact of the question. But
that's when my questions blow, right? Because I'll start to ask the question, then I'll tell them why I'm asking the question, then I'll anticipate objections to the question,
right,
then I will deliver the question,
So by the time
and then I'll give them 2 choices for an answer, and then by the end I'm like, you get what I'm saying? Like, no.
That's it's kind of funny because as I think about this, I think for me that's the biggest area where I will burn out fastest is when I can feel myself questioning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I? It's because mine will often boil back down to like if I get into those spaces where it doesn't feel like it's flowing smoothly from me, it feels like am I even good at this? I was telling a client this morning about how when I used to write songs, if I sat down to like write a song,
Mm-hmm.
I would like overthink it. I'd realize I'm actually just stealing the song from like Goldfinger or like the lyrics would be like, I'd rhyme time with rhyme and it was like, oh geez, like, but if like this happened a few times, like some girl would be at my house and be like, hey, like write a song for me. I'm like, okay. And I'd just be like making jokes.
Yeah.
And every time I was like, oh, that's good. I can write that down afterwards. Because I wasn't thinking like, how's this going to come out? When I would write music, I found that the times when I wasn't pausing to think about it, like if a girl said, just write me a song, I'd write stuff that was funny. I would just trust the fact, like, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just throw it out there. And it was enough that I was like, I knew enough about music, we'll say, that it wasn't hard for me to go do that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get way in my head about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think about dudes, well, just humans, but dudes in like the way, I don't think men like to admit that they are overthinkers.
No, because I think we talk about it like
that's a woman thing to do.
No, like, well, maybe, yeah. I think it's more like, no, I'm a thinker. I'm thinking this thing through.
Yeah.
Like,
like it's a good
like
good value,
my
a good quality.
way of thinking about it is productive, and I'm doing work. But I think we qualify it maybe where like we don't feel like there's emotion driving it. Then I'm really thinking it through.
Right.
I mean, we say that all the time, right? Like, don't make emotional decisions, keep the emotion out of it. And I agree. I think there are a lot of decisions where, yeah, you should push back on some of those feelings, because I think I told you once when I was like working in a basically like treasury capacity at church, and that's basically what it is, like a financial clerk. And they do audits, every 6 months, and I think I said something. They asked about this category that's kind of like a slush fund, and I'm getting the message again, but they were like, well, how much has been in there, throughout the year or something like that. And I was like, I feel like they're like, there are no feelings with money. I was like, sorry. So yeah, certain situations where I think we would say my thinking is productive because there's not like, I can convey stoicism as I'm thinking, even if I am overthinking, probably, right? Like, we over engineer crap all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like a bit of a flex. Like, well, look at all these cool ideas and these like cool ways I can think about building this thing or doing whatever. And it's kind of like that example we've used before where like when they discovered that pens wouldn't work in space, and the United States spent like millions of dollars developing a pen that could write upside down, and the Russians were like, we used a pencil.
That's the kind of thing that I wonder about, like, which is kind of funny because there's benefit in developing the pen that can write upside down because all the technology that comes
probably
out of that
led to
any sort of other a number of other things. And so sometimes there is benefit to saying, well, we analyze this way, do you need a pen like this? No, but look what all the stuff that came from it. But I think the key to overthinking in this, and I actually think I'm going to tie everything in my head. It's like, this is the same reason why people would overeat. And it's like, it's not just overthinking something. Like, are you putting too much thought into how to do this thing? It's when I think overthinking happens most when you are too focused on outcomes, especially as it relates to like people's response and reaction to what you're doing. Then it's like, that's overthinking. That's a distressing kind of overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to think, I can't figure this thing out. And another thing to think, I can't figure this thing out. What's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I figure this out? Chris would have figured this out by now.
Yeah.
That's the overthinking that I think we play into. We don't even realize we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we watched that video in the beginning or before we did this about, the kid who's not getting the soccer ball. And thinking that woman basically boiled it down to women are thinking about all these relational things. And men are just saying, well, I just want to play my sport. So I think she was an idiot, but we've already established on multiple episodes now that apparently Rob just thinks women are idiots. But
let's build your case here just real quick though on that video.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to take too long.
You don't build it. Go ahead.
No, the message at the end was like, think about the outcome, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you do to produce the outcome that I didn't even ask you if you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost over attend to the needs of your wife. And it was like,
well, I guess, yes, I think, yes, only because she didn't say, like, maybe this is how men would approach this situation. Right. And that's valuable too. So how do we work as a couple, to bring both of those things together? It was like, men, because you think this way and because women think this way, don't think like you do.
Right.
And give her what she needs in this moment.
Yeah.
The end.
That's what, when I started doing therapy, I think I've told you this before, but is that because we were trained, Matt and I were both trained doing therapy in front of a two-way mirror. I was always like, is it two-way?
Dude, for me, I'm like, I guess I could go both ways. Technically, it's one way because I see through it and see what's back there, and you look into it and see what's back there. That's one way. Two-way is you see yourself and I see you. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
Meaning you
a window mirror.
Yeah, window on one side, a mirror on the other. Anyway, and so I got used to doing therapy with people in my head.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay, well, what's Steve going to think about this, or how's the class going to respond to this? And it was hard for me to turn that off for the first 3 years after having graduated. So I was doing therapy without people watching.
But
for
still
plenty
thinking
of
if
hours
someone were watching,
but still thinking if they're watching, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
And that's the part where sometimes still it's like I may not be doing it about what would Steve think, but I would do it about, well, what are my clients thinking? What do they think about this or this? Forgetting sometimes that I'm so used to talking about the things I talk about that my clients will hear it and think, whoa. And I'll think, I mean, that's like psychology 101, man.
Yeah.
And so just kind of trying to think through, how do I pause that overthinking and actually just kind of learn. And this is where it starts to fall back in towards discipline, which I'm going to tie it back then into the food thing, which we're going to have to do the episode on the food thing. I'm just going to text again and say, what do you mean by this? And we'll do a whole
Well, keep going because I think I think there's a lot of overlap with all three of these.
Yeah, because to me, the overthinking, if I were to able to just say, hey, look, I've done this for, I don't know how many thousands of hours I've done this now.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing. Will it always work? No. That's like a kicker in the NFL saying, will I always kick the winning field goal? No. But I know I will get it 75, 85, 90% of the time or whatever it is. It's not going to be that high, but still might be. That it's like, because I know I trust these things and there's some things that I can't count on and I don't trust those things. But it would be one thing to say, sometimes I have this hesitation with clients. I think if I tell them, hey, I want you to just say this to him or to her, just like I just said it. I do that periodically. I used to do it more often. Yeah. And I think over time I died out doing it because people were like, I feel weird. It's like, just freaking say it.
Yeah.
So I've stopped doing it because I feel like I'm making them uncomfortable. So I just stopped doing it. Like last night, my wife and I were watching a really funny Australian show called Colin from Accounts. It's on Paramount Plus. It's very, very funny. And at some point you're watching him and this woman on this first date. And it's like, dude, I cannot take how uncomfortable this is. I was like, we're going to turn this off. I can't even look at the TV. Sometimes that's how I feel in therapy. It's like, you guys look so uncomfortable. I can't watch this. But anyway, when I think about this, I think it does take a certain amount of discipline to get to a point where I've learned everything I have to learn and now I don't have to think about it. I've changed the way that I think about relationships and people so that I can say fairly confidently, 95% of the time, if you say this, she's going to say this. And so I'm going to stop it here and I'm going to ask this question and insert because I don't want it to go that direction. I want it to start to redirect you here.
Yeah.
And just trust, as they do, that I'm right. That discipline, and this may not be what you're thinking whether they connect, but I think that discipline is the same kind of thing when this get battle ready thing.
Yeah.
I do think the thing that's appealing that to me appealing about that to me is the idea, and I think this is why some men are drawn to it. It's like I think we miss sometimes the feeling of like I have to push myself in something that is difficult and challenging and requires discipline, even when I don't want to do it. I think that's sometimes why military is appealing to people. It's like, you just have to do this.
Yeah.
And it creates a structure that I know I get to count on no matter what, so that if everything falls apart, I still make my bed. And I think that is the same kind of discipline that gets me to a point now where it's like, well, I can just trust that I know what I'm doing because I've done this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
I've done this 20,000 times. The same thing actually is true for me with like eating. It's like, yeah, initially, I actually have thought this before. If I were to give up certain things I love, like going to the drink store, which I never will, mark my words, then I think what I have to lean into is wanting the discipline that comes from restricting that. We've talked about that on the rituals of restriction or rituals of deprivation, that I think there's value in saying, no, I want to push my body into something like this.
Yeah.
And I think that line of discipline is why so many men are drawn towards this. I want to feel powerful. I don't think we equate that sometimes now with like, you'll be overly masculine with huge rippling muscles. And it's like, no, really just want the feeling that comes from like, I'm in control of something.
Yeah.
And that's what I want my sessions to feel like in my head. It's like, I'm in control where this is going, even as much as I can't fully control it.
Yeah.
Yes. You look like you're about to say something.
Well, I got to look it up now, but no, what you just said tied back to this Aristotle quote that, speaking of battle ready and everything, I'm not gonna be able to find it, but basically it was like don't worry about like winning some external battle, basically. Right. Like the mastery of yourself, right, is really that's the battle to win. And we've heard variations of that all the time, like people who can master themselves can master anything externally,
right?
But yeah, I think that in therapy, side note, have you ever like gone back and calculated like how many sessions have I done in my career and like how many people have I seen? And I did it like a year ago and I was like, holy crap, it is.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy. Like,
yeah, if I try to calculate the number of people I've seen, like especially if you throw in stuff like groups and things like that.
Well, I just did it since like simple practice since I started that. So that was like 2017. But yeah, just looking at the number of clients you've worked with. I was
like, and even just in a year, I was like, I did that many hours in a year.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So I think you're right that it is like it's in your head. I mean, it's ready to go, right? Like
it's all
you don't
there.
have to overthink it, but even like a question like, is this working? Right. I think that even as therapists, we probably think about it more like, are my clients getting better? Or, with exercise, am I like losing weight, or am I getting stronger, or am I, is my time improving? With food, maybe the same thing, right? Like, am I able to stick to this or whatever? But, yeah, I wonder sometimes, like, what are we actually measuring? Especially when you think about conversations. Because I think you've probably had sessions where you're like, I feel like what I did worked and they were not, or, my client was not ready for that. So technically it didn't work because you didn't like meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
But had they been at a different place,
it was gold.
What you did would have worked, right? And yeah, and if we're judging it on like, is what was said received well?
Yeah.
Then
yeah, that
you have a lot of moments like that, and you have a lot of moments where it's like, I think sometimes people have said like one of the best things you can do sometimes is say something that's true that really offends your client, and then they stop coming because they're never going to get that out of their head, and they're going to keep wrestling with that and hopefully like pick it up and change with it, right? And so I guess when I'm thinking about mental health, it's like and exercise and food, right? I think about all those things, like what level of change is any of us ready for, and maybe where were we the most ready for change, Like, is that the starting point? And that's like kind of where I think discipline can come in, because I think automatically for me, mental health shoots up more than a notch if I'm able to do something that I know is good for me that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Like if I even have like one
day of doing it,
one success with that, like that day is pretty dramatically different. And but then the trick is like keeping that going consistently, right? I know like with exercise and stuff, you're probably like the most consistent person I think I've ever met in my life.
I know some more consistent,
but
yes.
Like for me, it's always it's a struggle, and I know every time, you know, I guess with like maybe food, I've been more consistent over time than with like exercise. But for me, those two are, I would say, more the exercise. Like my mental health hinges quite a bit on that. And I know that about myself, and I know, but it's not because I don't think it's just exercise. I think it is the feeling of possessing some discipline that makes me feel hopeful, makes me feel like my life's forward moving, and the opposite is true, right? Like a slip in discipline because I didn't like wake up like I still stay hopeful. I'm like, well, I can do it tomorrow, right? But after like a string of those, it's like it feels kind of like I can't get myself to do anything, you know? And so back and forth, and it hinges on a lot of things, but I think it's like the outcome maybe is like the development of a habit, right? Or like a system that works for you. But I think when we tie it too much to like external, out of your control, really, I mean, like weight loss is in your control, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, but
to a degree, yeah.
But not as much as we think in some cases, right? And other things affect it. Mental health, you know, to a degree is within our control, and I think sometimes it's just like that's kind of like your baseline's maybe just a little bit different than other people, and like so I guess you have control in terms of how much of that you accept. But yeah, I think you're right, that discipline piece and like the accumulation of small wins and habits is really probably the more important place to focus. Am I in my sessions today, did I speak clearly and not overthink, you know, how I need to word things or how they're going to respond or whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that idea of discipline to me gives us a sense of control.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of control gives us a direction or a purpose of like, I can change what my future will be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it feels like, I don't know. I mean, what does it matter if I get up and exercise? Tomorrow's going to be a crap day anyway.
Yeah.
But if you have the discipline, it allows you to feel like I have power to make my life go where I want it to go. I think that in this context, like what you're describing, and this is where the food thing, I think, or the exercise thing, like I've wondered before, I watch, like thanks to you, I watched these YouTube videos of a dude, it's really just one dude, he's my favorite, hiking. He's been all over the world. He's from like Denmark or something. It's like Harmon Hoek or something like that. Dude, his videos are the best.
That guy and Craig Adams, Craig with a K.
Okay, he's the second guy I've seen that I like not as much as the other guy though.
Yeah, but I'm like transported on a magical journey.
I know,
I just hear his feet hitting the rocks.
I know, it's the best. But it's and like watching the way they eat, I think that he's just eating the essentials of what his body needs to move forward. And that takes a certain kind of discipline. And I'm like, I don't have that discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say I couldn't develop it. I haven't wanted to develop it. Yeah. I feel like, no, I like the balance I have, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it gets out of balance and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. But watching them, I think, oh, I want that. I don't know if I'll ever have that. But I think about this food thing and actually we've talked before in an episode a while back, and then I saw another little clip of some woman saying this, that the worst thing you can do in the morning for yourself is is snooze past your alarm.
Dude, was that Mel Robbins thing? Because it like throws you into another
Maybe
sleep cycle. I just saw that and I was like, dang it.
But even if it's like, what's interesting to me is the discipline element, like, because I will wake up and I'll just lay there.
Yeah.
And if I just get out of bed, the odd feeling of accomplishment I have of just getting up when my alarm went off.
Yeah.
There's that whole thing that we could talk about too. That's like, you are, it seems like a quote from a movie, but it's like, you're approaching your day like, okay, I'm ready to do my day.
Yeah.
The other one's like, fine, I'll do this.
Yeah.
And I don't think we recognize how significant that is in our brain, the message we're telling ourselves. I also don't, we have these messages that will say that I am always like, I don't buy that.
Yeah.
When people are like, I'm just like, we all just have different rhythms and I'm a late sleeper. And if like, no, evolutionarily speaking, we are all designed to follow the sun.
Yeah.
If you were a hunter gatherer and it's like, no, I don't get up till 1. It's like, hey, Jerry, you're getting left behind. Bye. Like,
no caveman was named Jerry.
They were all named Jerry. Jerry. And then there's Jerry over there. We got Grok over here. I think that element though of like get up and go do it, it does make me feel like if I don't do that, my brain does slip. It's like an all or nothing thing. It's like one day it's like, cool, dude, I got up early. I'll exercise, I'll do this. And maybe, even if it's like, and then I'm going to go buy some crap and eat it, but I feel like, cool, it's fine. Days when I don't, it's like, well, today's a wash. I'll just wipe this one off the books.
Yeah. Like everything else just follows that trend.
Yeah. And then you start to feel like a piece of crap. Yeah, because you gave in that self-mastery and discipline is totally gone.
Yeah.
And so you're more likely to just repeat that over and over and over.
Throughout the day. Yeah.
And one more thing I'll say before you jump in is I actually thought when you said you develop a habit, I think if you do it long enough, you develop a different mindset totally and a different lifestyle. And that is significant because it's not just this is a habit. It's like, I believe differently about life.
I think it almost becomes like the atomic.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Every time I hear that title, I know, when I slow down, I'm like, oh, right. He's talking about atomic level, small piece developments of habits. And it's the whole premise of the book, obviously. But every time I hear it, I just think of like atomic wedgies or atomic dumps or something. I'm just like, atomic habits. But that idea that it'll become basically like a system, a lifestyle, a mindset, right? I think that part of that is already implanted because I know that when I wake up, if I don't just shut my thinking off, sometimes I've tried to say, let me really like maybe get up and think about how good I feel after I exercise. But like that voice in competition with all the like, well, you got a really hard day today and you probably need a little bit more sleep.
It's
and
cold outside.
It gets killed every time. So I have to like turn it off. Like you said, just get up. And then it's about like, I know once I'm out, I'm like, oh yeah, this feeling of being tired and not wanting to be awake and feeling like a little bit depressed that I'm like even sitting up right now or getting up, that goes away in about 10 minutes. And then the rest of the day is like amazing.
Right.
Well, not amazing, but it's way better.
You feel better.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus like I get multiple like stress relief responses by, snoozing. And it's like, oh crap. I can sleep a little bit longer. Like that. That's like a really addicting pattern. And then that sets, I just said it, addictive pattern. And then it sets the tone like that for the rest of the day. Let me like stress myself out just enough to where I can give myself an out. And that feels amazing. Right. And so it's like, I got to start doing this. Well, I got a couple more minutes. Right. And it's like, you just go through
it's all justifications.
Day, right.
Yeah.
And then, then you feel like crap. Then you recommit. But, several days strung together like that,
right?
You almost stop.
It's
at end of the day, like I'm going to do it tomorrow. Right. Just like, whatever, right? So, it is back to like overthinking. It's like just moving without thinking, right? Like just get up, just sit up, go, just that takes discipline because I think you're suspending a whole slew of dialogue in your head and like physiological and emotional weights that are kind of anchoring you to wherever you're at and just moving And then once you get beyond that, it's like,
Yeah.
you start to feel different.
Yeah, that's that exercise piece. It's like, just do it and your brain will think differently.
Right.
Before I go on to my next thought too, when you said addictive,
Oh yeah.
I hear clients all the time, and even clients who work in the field of substance abuse and recovery, that say withdraws, like they're going through withdrawals. And I'm like, withdrawals? It's withdrawals. Like, it is not withdrawals. Withdraws is not a thing. You don't go through withdrawals. Anyway,
side note,
that's a verb. Yeah.
Have you ever heard people go the other way with like, oh, now I'm screwing myself up. Like, it's another word for underwear.
Drawers?
Yeah.
My drawers?
But I've heard people say like
draws. Yeah, I don't know what it is. People say it. I'm like, I don't know. My drawers. I don't know.
Drawer.
Is it draws? I don't know. I don't know. Spacemen, answer us. Here's the last thing I'll say about this, and this is what I think is why this topic I think is a big deal to me, is this idea of like, sometimes I think we wait to be motivated. And I'm not and tons of people have said this. It's like, motivation will not do it for you. It has to be discipline.
Yeah.
If you wait for the thing
afterward.
Yeah. If you wait for the things
like the shit to come in, it never comes.
Yeah. And you'd have to know that if I do this, it's going to suck for a while. And that's a good thing. Like, the sucking part is not only, sorry, it's just, I got to find a different way to phrase that. But the part that sucks is not only good because it's you're pushing through to discipline. It's also teaching you, hey, discomfort is not a thing to be avoided. It's that thing we listened to earlier. Like, too much of us try to spend time thinking, I shouldn't ever feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And
sometimes you should feel uncomfortable, and that's fine. It doesn't mean something's wrong. Part of what I don't like about this term mental health is I think we've started to believe that mental health means you feel happy all the time. I think mental health means you know what's going on for yourself and you can own and accept it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, and I guess
right. The health means like being pain-free.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's not correct.
No.
And that's where it falls apart to say this health thing is like, because with physical health, it's like, I'm pain-free. It's like, well, then you're healthy. But if it's emotional health or mental health, it's like, you should have pain. If you don't have pain, you are not emotionally healthy. Yeah. You're doing something wrong.
Like mental health day, right? It's like you're probably actually doing things
more damage.
Good for your
you're
health.
Just totally avoiding problems.
Yeah.
So I think about this is maybe I'm done. I don't know, but this last part of these websites that every time I see them, I'm always like, well, I feel every time I get on these websites that are for men, it's like I feel inadequate as a man. Like, I don't
really. I mean, not really.
Like, I tend to be like, this is not accurate. What should be going on? I guess
that's what I'm saying.
That's my overarching thing.
My reaction is like, this seems like compensation for something.
Yeah, and what I think, but I still have these moments of like, geez, I don't have abs like that, or I don't, like,
yeah.
But it does. That's the part that kind of kills me, is these dudes who start it. It's like, and I figured this out, and it always feels like, dude, your message is so overbearing that clearly I don't think you've figured anything out. Like, you're cramming that down everybody's throat, trying to prove it to somebody, and it feels less about discipline and more about outcome, and not saying, hey, look, it doesn't matter if you end up with huge, giant drawers. It matters that you've developed this sense of mastery over self. We don't, if you're a nerdy guy and your mastery over self is that you crunch numbers better than anybody because you've mastered that part of yourself, great. It doesn't have to be that you, like, some of these podcasts are like, here's 5 tips to, getting one was 10 plus kisses from women on New Year's Eve. And it's like
how to get 10 different women to kiss you?
I think I couldn't tell. And it was like, don't miss this. I was like, oh boy, that's some clickbait if I ever heard it. Anyway, so I don't know if you have any other
back thoughts, to Harmon, dude. Harmon and Craig.
Oh yeah,
the hikers. I think that
he's so good.
Yeah, like I think most stuff about discipline is like the discipline necessary to simplify and zero in on essentials. And once you nail those, then you will know what excess is even worth adding to your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you'll be less likely to want excess for the sake of filling a void.
yeah.
So you'll have a Twinkie because it's like Twinkies are fun sometimes. You want to have a Twinkie because it's like then I'll feel happy.
Or even like excess muscle or excess whatever, right? Like
testosterone.
Yeah, I think maybe a lot of those guys have really simplified things so that they can focus in on something meaningful. But
I'm sure not all men who do those programs are like meatheads who
but I
want
think
to dominate
we've
their
worked
wives.
with men where it's like, man, if I don't blank, then
Right.
I'm like nothing. I'm
Right.
worth nothing, right? And but when you think about really like simplicity in I guess just being present in the moment, like moving in ways that are like challenging and rewarding, and I think just more like simplicity in food too, right? Like I mean, I know that there's a whole lot of different ways to do that, and there's nothing wrong with like making something a little bit more over the top because you enjoy it, but I think when you follow pretty simple principles like that, like all of these things kind of line up and you end up feeling more grounded and more peaceful and like more like you have more capacity to deal with the challenges too, because the basics are met. It's kind of like that old I guess it's like an object lesson, right? Like there's 50 different versions of it, but it's like the rocks and the pebbles in the sand. And if you get the rocks in first, then you know whatever else will fit. But and I think that's more the feeling I get on those days where it's like I hit some important things and it's like, cool. The rest could be crap and it would still be a good day, right? Like instead of I'm trying to like fill myself full of stuff that I think is going to make the day better, but it's all crap and like the rocks aren't even there.
It's interesting because I've started drinking protein in these little, I have like a powder, and man, I freaking Becky's like, it's so sweet. It's like a little morning treat. I'm so excited for it every morning.
Is it like a chocolatey one or is it?
Mine's vanilla.
Oh, okay.
It's delightful. And I don't have any hopes of, like, I started doing it thinking, hey, I wonder if this would give me more energy in a day. And I know that I don't get, like even the recommended amount of protein in a day. Now, do I need it? Probably not. But I've wondered, would it work energy wise? And actually, what I've felt like has happened is I feel like I think that the best thing for my energy in a day, even though initially there is some like, oh, I'm tired, is like getting up when my alarm goes off and following a routine in the morning before I do anything else that day, so that everything else is like, okay, that's done. And I always have like Fridays are a day off from running or exercise usually. So it's like there, like I have days where I know I'm just going to sleep in and sleep in is like 6 a.m., or 7. So it's like, ooh, but that feels like, okay, cool. There's some degree of balance in my life. And I don't feel like I need I cannot sleep until like when people are like, I slept till like 10. I'm like, I can't do that. My back hurts. Like I won't be able to sleep that long anymore. So the simplification part, I think that's another piece that I didn't mention. I'm glad you brought up is like this mindfulness, like with eating. Like I reach points periodically in my life where I'm like, I've been drinking so much soda. It doesn't really have an appeal to me. The part that has the appeal to me is going and getting it. It's like, wee.
Yeah.
But then I drink, I'm like, I don't even want this.
Can I tell you a story about cat at McDonald's?
No?
I love cats. We were talking in the Poo Poo Palace about like how amazing McDonald's Coke was.
Yeah.
So we went to get some and I was driving and she like the second that they handed us our drinks, she just like dove in on it and like I was pulling around to the front and she's like, stop. She wanted okay. She like literally like sprints in, comes back, she's like, sorry, that first sip was always the best, just had to top off.
Dude, I freaking love that woman, man. She was so funny. Anyway, so I like that stuff, I feel like when I get it tipped out of balance, I think I'm not even drinking this for the sake of drinking this anymore. Like I want to drink it because I enjoy it, and I lost the enjoyment of it. It's now the thing I have to do to make myself feel happy.
Yeah.
And that's more of that relationship between those things. It's like eventually it's like any other drug. It's like I have to do this because it makes me feel normal.
Yeah.
Instead of saying I learned to slow it down, and I haven't cut it out. For me, cutting stuff out of my diet has never really worked very well. I will just do sometimes the most I'll do is far less of something.
Yeah.
Because I still want to be able to enjoy the things I enjoy. But to say like, well, I guess I'm never eating M&Ms again. It's like, I'm not doing that, man.
Yeah.
That's why I probably should never drink alcohol. Because I'd be an alcoholic, and I would be like, I'll be the guy who's like,
stop.
I can just have one. And then my clients, I'll be like, cool, dude, that's not going to work. No, I think I can. Okay, cool. I'll see you in 2 weeks when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
They love that. And they come back like, it didn't work. I'm like, yeah, weird. It's like one of us knew. So anyway, Spacemen.
That's the relationship between mental health, food, and exercise.
Until I text and he's like, that's not what I meant at all. I'm like, cool. Tell me what you meant. But get your discipline on. That's the take-home theme. And come back next time. Oh, Mike wasn't here today. Bye, Mike. He's having his anniversary today.
Although the picture he sent of him shoveling his driveway, Lisa was like, man, he looks really mad.
What's the best is he won't listen to this podcast, so he won't know we said that. His wife will hear it, though. I don't think. Did you listen to this ever?
Do I listen to our podcast?
Yeah.
I used to way back when.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore either.
I was trying to work on what we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Just being to the point, which is still a struggle for me.
Yeah, well, I've never been good at it. I've told clients 1,000 times, like, hey, I verbally process. So I start talking because I will get there. If I just think too much, I'll move all over the place and new thoughts will come in. This will actually hone me down. So just listen to it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, cool, here's my money. Anyway, come back next time and catch us on the Manspace. Ham bomb.